So continuing on with our review of the four methods that we have for factoring. We have factoring, we've tried that. We did square root, that's right here, taking the square root. And now in this problem, we'll do a review of completing the square, everybody's favorite. So what we're going to do first is we're going to subtract 3 from both sides because completing the square does not want it to be equal to 0, unlike the quadratic formula in factoring. So I have x squared plus x equals negative 3. All right, then we want to complete the square. So we want to figure out what number I could add to both sides. So let's try this. So remember 2n is equal to 1 because 1 is the coefficient of x, right? Just a little reminder. So that means that n is equal to 1/2 because you divide both sides by 2. That means n squared is equal to 1/2 squared, which is 1/4. All right, so that is what we're going to add to both sides. So let me take this right here. And what you do is you add that 1/4, that n squared, to both sides to complete the square. So we're going to take x squared plus x plus, and then we're going to add in 1/4 over here and then 1/4 over here. On the left-hand side, that'll be x plus 1/2 squared equals, and then this will be negative 11/4 over here. Now, how did I know that? Okay, well, the x plus 1/2, remember that half is your n value. So whatever your n value is, oops, let me make that bigger so you can see it. Whatever your n value is, that'll be the value in your parentheses. That is what you're doing when you're adding the 1/4 to both sides, is that you're forming it into a perfect square. And the value for that perfect square will be your n value. And then over on the other side, I just added those numbers in my head. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you can just do negative 3 plus 11 over, oh, excuse me, sorry, I'm doing the answer already, plus 1 over 4. There it is, 1 over 4. And you get negative 11/4, just like I said. Or if you have the old kind of calculator, you can do negative 3 plus 1/4 and hit the math 1 button. Enter, and then you'll get the same answer. All right, so we have it that it's negative 11/4. So the reason for doing this was because then you can actually take the square root of both sides, like we were just doing in the previous problem. So square root, always remember that whenever you take the square root of both sides, you need plus or minus. So that'll be x plus 1/2 equals, all right, now let's break this up a little bit here. So this is I, first of all, and oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of mess here. All right, so we have the I square root of 11 on the numerator, because the negative will make an I, and then the square root of 4 in the denominator, which is 2, right? So let's just skip that step and make it 2. And then you subtract 1/2 from both sides. And if you do it over there, then you have to do it over on the other side. And then these are not like terms, so then you're stuck writing the answer x equals negative 1/2 plus or minus, there it is, and then I square root of 11 over 2. And if you like, you can also write it in the more formal way, which is when you put the I in the back, right? So that's the complex number way to write it, because that's A plus BI. So both of those would work. There we go. Now I've boxed them both. Okay, so that's completing the square. And now we're going to practice a quadratic formula one right here. All right, there we go. So we have 4x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0. Now notice, conveniently, this is already set equal to 0. We like that. So A is 4, B is 3, C is negative 2. All right, that's not going to factor easily, and I'm not going to use the completing the square method because a is not 1 and I wasn't forced to. So let's practice a quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus, there we go, square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, this would be negative b, that's negative 3, plus or minus the square root 3 squared. Just get in the habit of putting b squared in parentheses with the square outside. That'll help you whenever they're negative. So 4 times negative 2 all over 2 times 4. All right, so then this is x equals negative 3 plus or minus, square root of something, we'll figure that out in a sec, over 8. All right, let's figure this out. So this is 3 squared, that's 9. 9, and then this is 16 times 2, so 32. So 9 plus 32, that's 41, I think. Now let's double check me because I'm doing that in my head. So it was 3 parentheses, 3 squared. And again, you don't have to use parentheses here, but it's just a good habit to be in. Minus 4 times, what was it? 4 times negative 2. 4 times negative 2. Yep, I was right. It's 41. Beautiful. Well, and there isn't really much more to say about that one because 41 is not going to be divisible by something that's going to break down. There's no perfect square, let's put it that way, that goes into 41. So we're actually done right there. All right, so we've reviewed factoring, taking the square root of both sides, then the completing the square method, which is pretty messy. It works, but it's pretty long, and then the quadratic formula. All right, so now let's use those ideas to solve this story problem. It says the amount of electricity flowing through a surface is called the current I and is measured in amperes A. The current through a particular wire, I of t, in amperes after t seconds can be modeled by this quadratic equation. So find t when I of t equals 10. And what does that mean in the given situation? Okay, so we want to let I of t equal to 10. So that's 2t squared minus 6t plus 7 equals 10. Okay, so now we want to solve that by hand. Well, the easiest way to solve it by hand, since we can't see if this is easily factorable or not, is to set it equal to 0, and then we'll go from there. So t squared minus 6t minus 3 equals 0. Okay, well, I don't think it factors, but I'm not quite sure, and it would be kind of messy to figure because a is not 1. I would not use completing the square or the square root method on this. I would use the quadratic formula. So t equals, let me remind you, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's look up here. A was 2, b was negative 6, c was negative 3. All right, so we have t is equal to negative b, that's negative 6. And again, it's such a good idea to get in the habit of putting square roots around your b values, because that way when they're negative, like they are in this case, you're used to it. So it's parentheses negative 6, close parentheses squared, minus 4 times 2 times negative 3, all over 2 times 2. Okay, so that's pretty ugly. So t is equal to, all right, negative 6, that's 6. The denominator's 4. We need a plus or minus square root, and we need to figure out what this is. So negative 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. So parentheses, negative 6, close parentheses, squared, minus 4 times 2 times negative 3, I think it was. I'll make sure. Yep, 4 times 2 times negative 3 made 60. Okay, so 60. Okay, but 60 is divisible by a perfect square. It's namely divisible by 4. So this is 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 15. Okay, so that's t equals 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 15 all over 4. 4, not 5. But then look at the three numbers you have, the three multiplicative numbers, the coefficients. You have a GCF of 6, 2, and 4 is 2, right? So you're going to reduce that down a little bit. And that would be, let's see here, t equals 6 divided by 2 is 3, so 3 plus or minus 1 square root of 15, so square root of 15 all over 2. All right, so there is our two results. But this is a story problem, so it doesn't really do us a lot of good to have this whole big square root thing in there. What we really need are what those decimal numbers would be. So let's find that. If we take our calculators, we can find what these two values are. So t is, and let's find them, 3 take away the square root of 15, close your parentheses, oopsie, go back in here, get out of the square root and then close your parentheses, and then divide that by 2, right? And that gets you negative 0.46. Okay, and then do it again. Matter of fact, second enter will work beautifully, and you can put a plus sign in there. There we go. Plus, and it's the same problem, but with a plus sign, right? Second enter is a wonderful thing. And it just occurred to me, you might want to be able to try this with the other methods. So let's see, if I hit alpha F1, and I hit the numerator denominator thing, 3 plus square root of 15, square root of 15, and then use my arrow keys to arrow down to 2, enter, and see it finds it that way. And that alpha thing is nice because it makes it look like it actually looks on the paper. 3 plus square root of 15 over 2. So we get negative 0.436 and positive 3.436. So t is approximately negative 0.436, or t is approximately positive 3.436. Okay, so there are my two results right there. All right, so now here's the thing. What do they really mean, right? So we have to explain that. So hold on one sec. Okay, so this means that what we're finding is the amperage, or the, what is it? The current through the wire. So the current through a wire in amperes. So the current through the wire was 10 amperes in 3.436 seconds. And that's it, right? Because the other one doesn't actually make any sense. It'd be negative 0.436 seconds. So we're going to have to cross that one off. It doesn't really work in this case. So the only answer we actually have is the first part, right? Is the second one. Because the first one makes no sense at all. You can't go back in time before you put current through the system, right? That wouldn't work at all. All right, so now let's back ourselves up with the calculator. So that's going to mean sketching a graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the calculator and I'm going to press y equals. I'm going to clear out the old and type 2x squared minus 6x plus 7 for the y1. I'm going to put 10 in for y2. I'm going to just do it on a regular window and see what I can see here. And there it's graphing it. Oop, hold on. I got to make my window a little bit bigger. So press window and go to your Y max and make it a little bit larger so you can see the 10 value coming across. And then we're going to have to hit, once it comes across, there it is going. So calc, second trace, number 5, intersect, enter, enter. And we don't really want the one on the left because it's negative. So use your arrow key and arrow over to the right and press enter. And there you go. And then just draw a picture of that and put it on your paper. And And there it is. You draw a sketch like that and make sure you label your intersection point. And we don't care about the negative one because it makes no sense.